What if Star Wars actually made space look too safe? Sure, lightsabers and giant battles changed cinema forever, but some filmmakers looked at the stars and saw something much darker. These R-rated space movies turned the universe into a cold, dangerous place, where one mistake could end everything. And some of them made that famous galaxy far, far away look almost like a family vacation. If you love forgotten sci-fi, dangerous space missions, and movies Hollywood will struggle to make today, hit like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. Number 20. Galaxy of Terror, 1981. A mysterious planet, a missing spaceship, and a rescue team that has absolutely no idea what it is walking into. That simple setup turns Galaxy of Terror into one of the strangest R-rated space horrors of the early 80s. The story begins after a vessel disappears on the planet Morganthus. A new crew is sent to investigate, but almost immediately they discover a gigantic pyramid sitting in the middle of the alien landscape. Nobody knows who built it or why it is there. Inside, things become much worse. The explorers begin facing creatures and situations that appear connected to their own deepest fears. In other words, the pyramid does not need to invent new nightmares. It simply reaches into the minds of its visitors and gives their fears a physical form. That concept is much smarter than the movie's low-budget reputation suggests. One of the strongest moments comes when the crew slowly realizes that their separate encounters are not random. The structure itself appears to be testing them. Suddenly, every shadow and doorway becomes personal. Robert Englund appears years before becoming a major horror icon, while James Cameron worked behind the scenes on production design before becoming one of Hollywood's biggest directors. The sets are surprisingly impressive for a Roger Corman production, with huge industrial corridors, glowing machinery, and strange architecture making the planet feel far larger than the movie's budget. It is messy, weird, and occasionally completely outrageous, but that is part of its charm. Number 19. Ghosts of Mars, 2001. Mars has been colonized, mining towns have appeared across its surface, and humanity thinks it finally owns another planet. John Carpenter immediately asks, what if Mars disagrees? The story follows police officer Melanie Ballard, who arrives at the remote settlement of Shining Canyon to transport dangerous prisoner Desolation Williams. The mission should be routine. Bring the prisoner back, put him on the train, and leave. Instead, the town appears almost completely abandoned. The remaining survivors explain that miners opened something underground and released an ancient force. Soon, people across the settlement begin behaving like warriors from a civilization humanity never knew existed. That gives Ghosts of Mars a bizarre mixture of science fiction, horror, and Western storytelling. The dusty settlements look more like frontier towns than futuristic cities. Trains cross the Martian landscape, law officers transport prisoners, and mining companies push deeper into territory they barely understand. Then everything collapses. One of the movie's biggest sequences arrives when Ballard and Williams are forced to work together as the settlement comes under attack. Their alliance is uncomfortable because neither trusts the other, but survival suddenly matters more than the law. Ice Cube plays Williams with swagger, while Natasha Henstridge carries the film as Ballard. If these movies are already making the Star Wars galaxy look comfortable, make sure you're subscribed before we continue. And tell us below, which space movie made the universe feel genuinely dangerous to you? Number 18. Screamers, 1995. What happens when a weapon becomes so intelligent that it decides soldiers are no longer necessary? That nightmare drives Screamers, an underrated science fiction thriller adapted from Philip K. Dick. The setting is Sirius 6B, a mining planet devastated by a long war between rival human factions. Commander Joe Hendrickson, played by Peter Weller, has spent years surviving in a ruined military outpost while both sides continue fighting a conflict that seems increasingly pointless. Then the machines change everything. The Screamers were originally built as autonomous weapons. They travel underground, detect enemy soldiers, and attack without requiring human control. At first, that sounds like the perfect military invention. Unfortunately, they learn. And then they start redesigning themselves. One of the movie's most effective ideas appears when apparently harmless human figures approach survivors across the wasteland. Nobody knows whether they are real people or new versions of the machines. That changes the entire atmosphere. Every stranger becomes suspicious. Every rescue could be a trap, and even the person standing beside you may not be what they claim. Peter Weller gives Hendrickson the tired attitude of someone who has stopped believing patriotic speeches. He simply wants to get himself and his surviving soldiers out. The barren planet strengthens that feeling. Everything looks destroyed, frozen, and forgotten. Number 17, Soldier, 1998. Sergeant Todd was never really allowed to become a normal human being. From childhood, he was trained to fight, obey commands, and survive. Emotions were treated as weaknesses. Family did not matter. His entire purpose was military service. Then the military decides he is obsolete. Kurt Russell plays Todd with surprisingly little dialogue, which is exactly why the performance works. When genetically improved soldiers are introduced, Todd and the older generation are treated like outdated machines. After a brutal test, Todd is believed to be finished and dumped on a garbage planet called Arcadia 234. That should be the end of him. Instead, it becomes the beginning of his humanity. A small community living among the planet's enormous piles of wreckage takes Todd in. At first, he barely understands ordinary conversation, family life, or kindness, because none of those things were included in his training. Slowly, he begins protecting the people around him. Then, the new soldiers arrive. The film's most satisfying section comes when Todd turns the junk-covered settlement into his battlefield. The supposedly outdated soldier understands survival better than the advanced replacements sent to eliminate the colony. There are explosions and large action sequences, but underneath them is a surprisingly sad idea. Todd has spent his life being told that his only value comes from how effectively he can follow orders. Yet he finally becomes truly human when he chooses to protect people without being commanded to do so. Number 16, Prospect, 2018. Not every space movie needs gigantic fleets and exploding planets. Sometimes all you need is one poisonous moon, one valuable resource, and a handful of desperate people willing to betray each other for it. That is the world of Prospect. Teenager C travels with her father to a forest-covered alien moon where prospectors search for valuable biological gems. Their spacecraft is not beautiful. Their equipment looks scratched, patched, and repaired. Their suits appear heavy and uncomfortable. Everything feels used. That realism immediately separates the film from glossy science fiction adventures. After landing, C and her father attempt to harvest enough material to make the dangerous trip worthwhile. But when they encounter other prospectors, the situation quickly collapses. Soon, C finds herself traveling with Ezra, played by Pedro Pascal. He is charming, unpredictable, and clearly capable of becoming dangerous, which makes their uneasy partnership the heart of the story. One memorable sequence carefully shows the process of extracting valuable gems from strange organic pods. There are no magical crystals waiting conveniently on the ground. The procedure is difficult, delicate, and potentially costly if performed incorrectly. That detail makes prospecting feel like actual work. The film also refuses to stop every 5 minutes and explain its universe. Characters use unfamiliar slang, technology, and customs as though they are perfectly normal. We are the outsiders. By keeping the story small, Prospect makes its universe feel enormous. Number 15, Alien 3, 1992. Few sequels have ever opened with a more unforgiving message. Surviving the previous movie does not guarantee anything. After escaping LV-426, Ellen Ripley's cryosleep chamber crashes onto Fiorina 161, an isolated industrial prison populated by inmates living under strict religious discipline. Ripley survives, but the people she escaped with do not share her luck. That decision made audiences furious, but it immediately establishes the mood of Alien 3. This is not going to provide an easy victory. Fiorina 161 is one of the bleakest environments in the franchise. Giant furnaces, rust-covered passageways, and enormous industrial chambers make the entire colony look like it is slowly decaying. Then Ripley discovers that something else may have survived the crash. Without soldiers or powerful weapons, the prisoners have almost nothing capable of stopping the creature. Their solution is desperate. One of the movie's most memorable sequences sends the prisoners running through a complicated network of narrow corridors, attempting to lure the alien toward a trap. Doors slam, directions become confused, and nobody is completely sure where the creature will appear next. David Fincher's camera moves aggressively through the tunnels, making the facility itself feel like a maze. But the real story belongs to Ripley. When she discovers why the alien has behaved differently toward her, the entire mission changes. The company wants what she is carrying, and Ripley understands exactly what they will do if they obtain it. Number 14. Outland, 1981. You could remove the spacesuits from Outland, replace Jupiter with the American frontier, and the basic story would still work perfectly. That is exactly what makes it interesting. Sean Connery plays William O'Neill, a marshal assigned to a mining colony on Io, one of Jupiter's moons. The workers are breaking production records, management is celebrating enormous efficiency, and everything appears profitable. There is just one problem. Some workers are experiencing serious psychological breakdowns. O'Neill investigates and discovers that a dangerous substance is being quietly distributed to miners because it helps them work longer and harder. Management knows. Profit matters more. Once O'Neill begins pushing too deeply into the operation, he becomes a threat to the people benefiting from it. That is when the movie transforms into a space version of High Noon. Professional enforcers are coming to eliminate him. O'Neill knows when their shuttle will arrive. He also knows that almost nobody in the colony wants to help. One of the film's best stretches simply watches the clock get closer to arrival time while the marshal realizes how alone he really is. There are futuristic systems everywhere, but technology cannot fix cowardice. Connery gives the character a tired dignity. He is not trying to save civilization. He simply sees something wrong and refuses to pretend otherwise. Number 13. Moon, 2009. Imagine spending 3 years completely alone on the moon, only to discover that the person you trust least is yourself. Sam Bell operates a lunar mining base responsible for extracting helium-3, an important energy source for Earth. His contract is nearly finished, and he is counting the days until he can return to his wife and daughter. His only regular companion is Gertie, the station's artificial intelligence. Then Sam crashes a lunar vehicle. After recovering, he returns to the accident site and discovers something impossible inside the wreckage. Another Sam Bell. That moment turns Moon from a quiet isolation story into a fascinating mystery. Sam Rockwell effectively performs opposite himself for much of the movie, but the film does more than use the idea as a technical trick. The two Sams gradually develop different personalities. One is exhausted after years alone. The other has recently awakened and believes his mission is only beginning. Their arguments become emotional, because both men genuinely believe they are the original. As they investigate the base, they discover hidden information about the company operating the facility. The truth is far more disturbing than either expected. One of the movie's smartest choices is Gertie. Because audiences have been trained to distrust artificial intelligence in science fiction, every calm sentence sounds suspicious. Yet the film complicates that expectation. The result is a story about identity rather than aliens. Number 12. Pitch Black, 2000. The survivors believe they have crashed on a dead planet. They are wrong. After a transport vessel suffers a catastrophic accident, the remaining passengers crash onto a dry desert world illuminated by several suns. Water is limited, communication is impossible, and everyone is already suspicious of one another. Then they discover the planet has inhabitants. Richard B. Riddick is being transported as a prisoner when the ship crashes. He is dangerous, intelligent, and physically intimidating. Naturally, nobody wants to trust him. But Riddick possesses one extremely useful advantage. His surgically modified eyes allow him to see in darkness. At first, that detail seems almost unnecessary, because the planet rarely becomes dark. Then the survivors discover evidence of a previous settlement and learn that a rare eclipse is approaching. When the suns disappear, thousands of nocturnal creatures rise from underground. That transformation is the movie's defining moment. Suddenly, every flashlight, flare, and glowing device becomes more valuable than any weapon. The survivors must cross the darkness, carrying limited sources of illumination, while creatures circle around them. Riddick becomes their reluctant guide. Vin Diesel's performance is surprisingly controlled. He does not need constant speeches. His quiet confidence makes the character feel dangerous, even while he is helping. The film also refuses to guarantee survival for anyone, simply because they seem important. That uncertainty keeps the tension high. Number 11. High Life, 2018. Space exploration has rarely looked less heroic than it does in High Life. Robert Pattinson plays Monty, a man living aboard a deep space vessel with his young daughter Willow. At first, the ship appears almost empty, and the mystery is obvious. Where did everyone else go? Through flashbacks, we learn that the mission originally carried a group of prisoners sent into deep space as part of an experimental program. Their destination is connected to a black hole. Their chances of returning are essentially non-existent. That knowledge changes the way we understand the ship. It is not really an exploratory vessel. It is closer to a floating laboratory. Monty tries to maintain discipline while the crew's relationships deteriorate around him. Scientific experiments continue even as trust disappears. Juliette Binoche plays Dr. Dibbs, whose obsessive research becomes one of the movie's most uncomfortable elements. Yet the film is not interested in simple villains. Everybody on board carries damage from Earth into space. The endless darkness outside does not erase human desire, loneliness, resentment, or regret. It magnifies them. The relationship between Monte and his daughter eventually becomes the emotional center of the film. He is trying to raise a child in a place where ordinary human society no longer exists. Every routine becomes meaningful because survival has become their entire world. Number 10. Pandorum, 2009. Imagine waking aboard a gigantic spacecraft with no memory of how long you have been asleep. Now imagine hearing something moving in the walls. That is how Pandorum begins. Corporal Bauer awakens from hypersleep aboard the colony ship Elysium. Lieutenant Peyton wakes nearby, but neither man can fully remember the mission. Most systems are malfunctioning. The reactor is approaching failure, and the rest of the crew seems to have vanished. Bauer crawls through the ship searching for the reactor, while Peyton remains behind attempting to recover information. The deeper Bauer travels, the stranger the vessel becomes. He discovers survivors hiding throughout the enormous interior, along with fast-moving humanoid creatures that hunt through the corridors. At first, the situation looks like a straightforward monster problem. Then Pandorum starts revealing a much bigger mystery. The title refers to a psychological condition that can affect people during long periods of deep space isolation. That means neither the characters nor the audience can immediately trust every memory or explanation. One memorable section takes Bauer through the ship's enormous mechanical spaces as he desperately attempts to restart the reactor before the vessel becomes completely powerless. Meanwhile, the truth about the Elysium's history slowly emerges. Number 9. Life, 2017. Humanity has finally discovered life beyond Earth. For about 5 minutes, that feels like wonderful news. A crew aboard the International Space Station receives a soil sample collected on Mars. Inside it is a dormant microscopic organism. The scientists successfully revive it. The world celebrates. School children even help give the organism a friendly name, Calvin. That friendliness disappears very quickly. Calvin grows rapidly and demonstrates an extraordinary ability to adapt. Its simple biological structure gives it unusual strength and flexibility. When one scientist attempts to revive it after it becomes inactive, the experiment goes wrong. That laboratory sequence is where life reveals what kind of movie it really is. The crew is trapped on a station filled with narrow passageways, ventilation systems, and sealed laboratories. Every attempt to isolate Calvin creates another problem. Ryan Reynolds, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Rebecca Ferguson lead the ensemble, but the movie cleverly avoids making survival predictable. The astronauts gradually understand that their mission has changed. They are no longer studying alien life. Their only responsibility is ensuring Calvin never reaches Earth. That creates the movie's cruelest idea. Normally, returning home is the objective in a space story. Here, getting home could be the worst possible outcome. The final sequence uses 2 escape capsules and cross-cutting to make audiences believe they understand what is happening. Then the movie reveals the truth. It is one of those endings that becomes more disturbing the longer you think about what happens after the screen goes black. Number 8. Prometheus, 2012. Human beings have spent thousands of years asking who created us. Prometheus suggests that discovering the answer might be a terrible idea. Archaeologists Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie Holloway notice matching star patterns appearing in ancient civilizations that supposedly never contacted one another. They believe the patterns are an invitation. Years later, the spacecraft Prometheus carries an expedition to a distant moon where they expect to meet the beings responsible for humanity's existence. Instead, they discover enormous structures filled with evidence that something went catastrophically wrong. Ridley Scott gives the film a scale rarely seen in adult science fiction. The explorers look microscopic beside massive alien chambers, gigantic stone faces, and technology built for creatures far larger than humans. One of the most beautiful sequences involves the ship's holographic mapping systems reconstructing the structure as floating light. Then there is David. Michael Fassbender's android is polite, calm, and endlessly curious. But there is something uncomfortable about the way he studies the humans around him. He has been created by humanity. Now he is helping humanity search for its own creator. That parallel becomes increasingly important. Elizabeth Shaw's desperate medical sequence is another unforgettable moment because she must rely completely on technology while confronting something she never expected to carry inside her. Number 7. Alien, Covenant, 2017. The planet appears almost perfect. There is breathable air, fresh water, vegetation, and no obvious sign of dangerous wildlife. Naturally, that should make everyone suspicious. The colony vessel Covenant is transporting thousands of sleeping settlers to a distant world when a major accident damages the ship. During repairs, the crew intercepts a strange human transmission coming from a much closer planet. Changing course could save years. Captain Oram decides to investigate. Almost immediately, the decision becomes disastrous. Tiny biological particles infect members of the landing team, leading to chaos before the crew even understands what is attacking them. The survivors eventually encounter David, the android from Prometheus, who has been living alone among the remains of an ancient civilization. Michael Fassbender also plays Walter, the Covenant's newer android. That gives the movie its most fascinating scenes. David considers himself an artist and creator. Walter sees himself as a machine designed to serve. During their famous flute conversation, David teaches Walter to play while quietly revealing how superior he believes himself to humanity. It is calm, strange, and more unsettling than many of the creature attacks. Then we discover what David has been doing during his years alone. His experiments connect directly to the familiar alien species. The final portion returns to fast-moving survival cinema as Daniels attempts to stop the creature aboard the Covenant. For a moment, everything appears finished. Then comes the final identity reveal. Number 6. Total Recall, 1990. Douglas Quaid wants to visit Mars. His wife thinks the idea is ridiculous, so instead of actually going, he purchases the memory of a vacation. What could possibly go wrong? Arnold Schwarzenegger plays Quaid, an ordinary construction worker obsessed with dreams about the Red Planet. A company called Recall promises customers artificial memories that feel completely real. Quaid chooses an adventure package where he will remember being a secret agent. Then technicians discover something unexpected inside his mind. Apparently, somebody has already erased parts of his memory. Suddenly, armed men are chasing him. His wife reveals their marriage may not be real, and Quaid receives instructions from a mysterious recording of himself. The journey eventually takes him to Mars, where a powerful administrator controls the colony's air supply, while rebels struggle for freedom. One of the film's most famous scenes comes at the planetary security checkpoint. Quaid arrives disguised as a woman using an elaborate mechanical mask. When the device malfunctions, the entire disguise breaks apart, and the escape becomes wonderfully chaotic. Paul Verhoeven fills the movie with bizarre technology, practical effects, and dark humor. But the cleverest element is uncertainty. The audience never receives completely undeniable proof that Quaid's adventure is real. Number 5. Sunshine, 2007. The sun is dying, Earth is freezing, and humanity has enough material for one final attempt to fix it. That is the terrifyingly simple setup of Danny Boyle's Sunshine. The crew of Icarus II is carrying a massive stellar bomb toward the sun. Their mission is to deliver the device with perfect accuracy and restart solar activity before Earth becomes uninhabitable. 8 people are carrying the future of humanity. Naturally, something goes wrong. Cillian Murphy plays physicist Robert Capa, while Chris Evans plays engineer Mace. Their personalities clash because every decision has enormous consequences. When a navigation error damages part of the ship, the crew realizes their resources may no longer be sufficient to finish the mission. Then they detect Icarus I. The original mission disappeared years earlier while attempting the exact same objective. Instead of continuing directly toward the sun, the crew makes the dangerous decision to investigate the abandoned vessel. That choice changes everything. One of the movie's most beautiful scenes appears much earlier, when crew members watch Mercury pass across the face of the sun. Against the enormous burning star, the entire planet looks like a tiny black dot. The image makes human civilization seem unbelievably fragile. As the mission continues, the movie becomes increasingly psychological. Some characters begin viewing the sun almost religiously. Others focus only on completing the mission. The final sequence places Kappa physically closer to the star than any human has ever survived, turning light itself into an overwhelming force. Number 4. Starship Troopers, 1997. At first, Starship Troopers looks like a simple story about attractive young heroes defending humanity from giant alien insects. That is exactly what Paul Verhoeven wants you to think. Johnny Rico lives in a futuristic society where military service is treated as the highest form of citizenship. His girlfriend Carmen dreams of becoming a pilot. His classmate Carl joins military intelligence. Rico chooses the mobile infantry. The movie presents their recruitment with cheerful propaganda, polished uniforms, and exciting promises of adventure. Then the war begins. After an enormous attack on Earth, humanity launches an invasion of the arachnid planet Klendathu. The soldiers arrive confidently. Within minutes, the operation becomes chaos. The famous Klendathu sequence destroys the heroic fantasy built during training. Landing craft fall from the sky, formations collapse, and the supposedly primitive enemy proves far more dangerous than military planners expected. Yet the propaganda never stops. Every disaster is presented publicly as another reason to fight harder. The broadcasts repeatedly ask, "Would you like to know more?" while turning war into entertainment. That satire is what makes the film so much richer than a normal creature feature. When it was released, some critics misunderstood the movie and believed it was celebrating the imagery it was actually mocking. Years later, its reputation changed dramatically. The uniforms, speeches, and news broadcasts are intentionally uncomfortable. Rico believes he is becoming a great soldier. Number 3. Event Horizon, 1997. In 2040, humanity builds a spacecraft capable of traveling faster than light. Then it disappears. 7 years later, the Event Horizon suddenly returns. Nobody on board answers. That is where one of cinema's darkest space mysteries begins. Captain Miller leads the rescue ship Lewis and Clark toward Neptune after receiving orders to investigate the lost vessel. Dr. William Weir joins the mission because he designed the Event Horizon's experimental gravity drive. When the crew boards the ship, they discover empty corridors, strange readings, and evidence that the original crew experienced something impossible to explain. A damaged recording eventually becomes the first major clue. The rescuers watch fragments of the Event Horizon's final transmission and realize that whatever happened on board was far beyond a normal technical accident. Then crew members begin seeing things. Memories of dead relatives, personal regrets, images connected to guilt. It starts to appear as though the ship knows them. Sam Neill's Weir becomes increasingly fascinated by what the vessel has experienced. Eventually, he explains the terrifying possibility. The gravity drive did not simply move the ship quickly through ordinary space. It opened a doorway into another dimension, and something may have come back with it. The production design is one of the movie's greatest strengths. The gravity drive chamber looks less like scientific equipment and more like the interior of a forbidden cathedral. Spikes, circles, and dark metal make the ship itself feel hostile. Number 2. Aliens, 1986. Ellen Ripley survived one alien. James Cameron decided to give her an entire colony full of them. Decades after escaping the Nostromo, Ripley's drifting shuttle is finally discovered. She wakes expecting only a short amount of time to have passed. Instead, everyone she knew has aged or disappeared. Even worse, company representatives refuse to believe her story about the creature that destroyed her crew. Then contact is lost with the human colony built on LV-426, the same world where Ripley first encountered the alien eggs. She reluctantly agrees to return as an advisor, alongside a squad of colonial marines. At first, the soldiers behave as though the mission will be easy. They joke, they show off their weapons, and Hudson proudly describes their firepower. Then they enter the colony. Nobody is there. One frightened child named Newt is discovered hiding in the ventilation system. Eventually, the Marines locate the missing colonists beneath the processing station. That leads to one of the movie's greatest sequences. Motion trackers begin showing movement. The soldiers look around and see nothing. Then somebody realizes the creatures are inside the room with them, hidden among the walls and ceiling. Confidence disappears instantly. From there, survival becomes increasingly difficult. Ripley's relationship with Newt turns the film into something more emotional than a normal action sequel. She has already lost her own daughter to time. Protecting Newt gives her another purpose. The final act remains legendary. After believing the danger has ended, Ripley discovers the alien queen has followed them. She steps into the power loader and faces the creature directly. No magical ability appears. No prophecy saves her. She uses machinery, courage, and experience. That is why Ripley remains one of science fiction's greatest heroes. She is not fearless. She understands the danger better than everyone else and still goes back. Number 1. Alien, 1979. Before 1979, mainstream space movies often looked clean, futuristic, and strangely comfortable. Then the Nostromo appeared. Suddenly, space looked like a workplace. The crew of Alien are not princes, chosen warriors, or legendary explorers. They are employees, hauling cargo through space. They complain about pay, argue about company rules, eat around the same table, and most importantly, they want to go home. Then the ship's computer wakes them after detecting a signal from an unknown world. Company procedure requires investigation. That decision changes everything. Dallas, Lambert, and Kane walk across the hostile surface and discover an enormous abandoned spacecraft. Inside, Kane finds a chamber filled with strange eggs. One of them opens. The famous sequence that follows aboard the Nostromo became one of the most discussed moments in movie history. The crew is having an ordinary meal. Kane appears to be recovering. Everyone begins relaxing. Then something completely unexpected happens at the table. Ridley Scott builds the moment so effectively because normal conversation immediately becomes panic. Afterward, the creature disappears inside the ship. That is where Alien becomes nearly perfect. The Nostromo is huge. The alien could be anywhere, and every pipe, shadow, and doorway begins looking suspicious. Instead of constantly showing the creature, the film lets the audience imagine where it might be hiding. The revelation involving Ash makes the situation even colder. The company knew the organism was valuable. The crew was considered expendable compared with the possibility of bringing it back. Suddenly, Ripley is fighting two threats: the alien and the corporation that placed everyone in danger. Her survival has nothing to do with destiny. She follows procedures, notices details, and makes difficult decisions when other characters hesitate. That practicality is precisely why she survives. So, which R-rated space movie really puts Star Wars to shame for you? Is it the cold terror of Alien, the unstoppable action of Aliens, or the nightmare voyage of Event Horizon? Drop your number one choice in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey through the darker side of science fiction, hit like, share the video with another movie fan, and subscribe for more forgotten classics, cult favorites, and dangerous trips into cinema history.